Colombia, after 21 days of a nationwide strike by thousands of farmers who were supported by bus and truck drivers, miners, students and others joining massive demonstrations in cities and towns all around the country in places as far as Boyacá, Cundinamarca, Cauca, Huila, Putumayo, Caldas, Cundinamarca and Nariño, and blocking more than 40 roads. In a historic moment, protesting farmers forced the Colombian government to negotiate the rejection of a farm bill and the release of detained protesters. On Sunday, September the 8th, Vice President Angelino Garzón met with the Strike Negotiating Commission in Popayán and agreed to suspend Law 970, the one that gave control over seeds to the government. They also were promised the release of the 648 arrested during the strike and the creation of a new mining law. Under this first and provisional agreement, the government will compensate the farmers for their losses when competing with cheaper products imported under as much as 10 free market treaties with countries all around the world. In other cases, it will suspend the importation of such products. The strike was ended and negotiations started to discuss the farmers' proposals. The process of negotiation, as well as the final agreement and its implementation, will be verified by the United Nations. In Putumayo, in the south of the country, farmers' leaders and other actors of Colombian society met with President Santos and other authorities and officially started the negotiations after signing the initial document. The destruction of the farmers' rights stock seeds they were keeping for the following year's planting time, occurred in Campo Alegre and other towns in 2012. For some, these images became the symbol of the farmers' strike, fighting for the right to keep their seeds. Seed control was described by President Santos as having Colombia tuned up to international reality. Having the Law 970 suspended is a partial yet symbolic victory for Colombia's social movement. Not only they got the seed control suspended, but most importantly, they got the government to recognize their leadership. The Mesa de Interlocución Agraria, Agricultural Dialogue Table, which was elected by the coalition of Colombia's social and political movement to negotiate with the government when they were organizing the strike. The press reported a number of attempts by the government to negotiate and extract concessions with various farmers' groups, but 13 other regions were still on strike, and the government was forced to finally sit down on the farmers' table and negotiate. This is a profound contrast with Colombia's recent past. Human rights groups, such as Amnesty International, have documented attacks on Colombian farmers and union leaders, who had been kidnapped, tortured and massacred by paramilitary forces, and sometimes even by the army, according to a number of reports published by Amnesty International. One of the towns that initiated the social strife was El Catatumbo in Tibú, north of Santander, in the northwest of Colombia, where local farmers resisted 51 days in street battles, like this one on the video. El Catatumbo's fight inspired thousands of other farmers who lost their fear, and about a month after that, they started a nationwide farmers' strike. A strike that 20 days after it began, managed to force the government to suspend Law 970 and at least study their other proposals. To push a resumption of negotiations, the strikers opened the roads they had blockaded. The negotiations are ongoing and they have to decide over more structural issues. These are some of their petitions: to set the prices for agricultural products independently of international market, and to set a fund to cover the difference so local farmers can get a fair price, and the government can guarantee their crops. A reduction in the price of gas and diesel, road tolls, and reduction on the price of fertilizer and other supplies. Cancellation of the current agricultural policy, including the control of seeds, but also other policies not favorable to small and medium farms. To stop the importation of many products, but most importantly to suspend and review the free trade agreements with the United States, European Union, China and other countries. Pardon for small and medium farmers' debts, and the adoption of softer credit for farmers via public banks. To stop and reverse the sale of public lands to international owners and give them back to local farmers. The mining sector also pledged to the strike from the beginning, and it incorporated its demands, some of which are the participation of traditional and small mining operators when setting policy that regulates the industry to stop and even revert some mining concessions and public contracts, until it's determined if the local communities are affected, if the resources generated in the mines benefit them, and if local small operations are allowed to work as well.
Las consecuencias de mi pueblo, minería a cielo abierto, es que van a acabar con una tradición y una cultura que tenemos más de 500 años. Es una tristeza que tenemos nosotros en el corazón porque venimos luchando. Nuestros antepasados han luchado por el territorio, una minería tradicional, una minería artesanal.
For the population in general, they demand investment on rural populations and cities to get access to education, healthcare, public service, and affordable housing. Many of these demands go against the core of the neoliberal policies adopted by previous Colombian administrations. The strike represented a broader segment of population than first thought. What started as a farmers and miners strike very soon turned into a general strike, with bus drivers, truckers, students, and even general population in the streets claiming for their own demands. Street battles of all kinds took place, like this one in Bosa, La Libertad, a neighbor outside Bogota, where many protesters attempt to take a police station by storm. The strike organization reported 660 human rights violations that were documented. The police brutality and the negative by the president to recognize the farmers' leadership, as well as the dire economic situation Colombians live every day with a minimum salary of $291 and a gas price of $4.6 a gallon. All of this created a sort of perfect storm that exploded in August. Police reported 648 arrested. The farmers' organization claimed 262 of them were illegally detained. There was 485 wounded and 12 dead on a week marked by protest. And while Santos put up a political fight, at the end of the day, after his popularity went down to an all-time record low of 21%, his government was forced to admit that it needed to recognize and negotiate with the national strikes leaders. We are yet to see if the Santos administration will concede any more of the farmers' demands, especially the more structural ones. Reporting for The Real News, this is Oscar Leon.